I had originally told them that they probably wouldn't, because the bottom of the river is rocky and no matter what they would do, they couldn't seal the bottom. And I told them they had to put sheet piling at both ends of the project and pump the water from the river flow around. And that was in their presentation, but DEP and the Army Corps didn't like that. They wanted to keep the water flowing in half of the river. So they tried it, it didn't work. So at the present time, they're on hold for the worst part of the winter anyway, and replanning and trying to convince DEP and the Army Corps to allow them to drive the sheet pilings across the river at the upstream end and the downstream end, and use some giant pumps to pump the river around. Plans look good, and that's what's going to happen there. I don't think there's any other alternative to get the stuff out of the bottom of the river and the banks of the river, so I think eventually the DEP will have to give in. And but that was the proposal at the beginning, and DEP didn't like it, but I think they'll have to like it now. So that's what's happening there. And I've never seen the whole river pumped around like that. There'll be 3 pumps going 24 hours a day and 1 standby in case one pump breaks down or they have a huge storm that is unanticipated. But they will have a 4th pump set up and ready to go with its sump and everything ready. And these pumps will have an 18-inch pipe coming out of them, so that's going to move a lot of water. So that's something that's happening there. It's right on the Walpole town line, you know, and I think the end result will be desirable. They've been making a good attempt to clean up the historic contamination on the site. So.
Where is this located?
It used to be Bird Roofing.
Where is it?
On the Neponset River, just at the Walpole Norwood town line. You know, where they make the roofing shingles.
Oh, okay.
Certainteed.
Right, okay.
Now it's called Certainteed.
Right, okay.
It was bought out by the French company 10, 15 years ago, and since then they have been working hard to clean up all the mistakes from 100 years ago.
Well, is that flow, is that before the water comes down from your pond?
It comes out of, first we have the Hollingsworth and Vos
Yeah,
paper mill that's
Right.
still
And
has
then
the
it's-
river going
right.
through it. And then after that, then it's the bird mill. The old
bird mill,
yeah.
then it's the other mill that's gonna be a museum or something like that.
Yeah, and that, well, you see, that was part of the bird plant anyway.
Right.
And that's where Bird invented linoleum.
Right.
It's gonna be a museum?
And there's a brewery there that's Castle Island Brewery that is increasing in size daily. They're doubling output in time.
Yeah.
Big demand.
Yeah, they say there's a lot of machinery still in the, it's still one of those mills. One of the buildings.
Well, the only building that has anything remaining is the big tall building where they invented linoleum, and that has no roof. It's a disaster, and eventually it'll have to be torn down,
Okay.
but that's phase 3, I think, of the development, redevelopment there.
But I haven't been in that area for a long, long time.
Well, see, that was part of the Bird Mill
Yeah.
site, you know.
Linoleum factory, wasn't it?
Well, that's where linoleum was invented.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay, not quite yet, huh? Okay. Oh, did Walpole vote to become part of the CPA?
No,
No, it
no,
didn't.
What's the CPA?
not
Community preservation.
Yeah.
Oh, I doubt it, yeah, right?
Oh, I wish there was some people who were interested in, pushing that.
Well, Norwood did vote, yeah, this year,
Positive?
yeah.
Yeah.
This year, and, but it's costing a lot of time and effort setting up the process
I'm
of
sure.
how to
Yeah,
deal
to
with
have a
it.
committee and,
Yeah,
review committee and.
yeah, and the committee has all kinds of things they have to do.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Has
so-
North Attleboro done it?
Good question, I'm not really sure
Well,
if that
let's
has it
see.
or not. Can't remember.
I didn't bring it in.
I saw the list, yeah, we
Yeah, I
all
have-
got it in the mail, I saw the list and I wrote down the list.
Yeah.
That's why I know it.
So, that list is a list of how much money each town is contributing into the system.
Right.
And it used to bug me that Walpole and Norwood were contributing huge sums of money and not getting anything back.
Yes, yeah.
So finally, the Norwood Town Meeting approved that,
So did you have a group in town that was
pushing it.
pushing it?
Yeah,
Or
we
the
pushed it for
administration?
10 years, and each time the selectmen would turn it down.
Okay.
And
Was
finally,
it Concom or other people?
well, mostly me and the town planner
Mm-hmm.
and a couple of other people. Let's see, what's the women's group that,
League of Women Voters?
yeah, okay, the lady that runs that in Norwood.
Right, okay.
uh,
Well, that would be something that we can try and get interest in, because I think it's certainly worth
Well, there's a
attempting, and I
lot of
don't think,
money that we're not getting back.
I know, and I don't think Walpole has ever put it forward at all, not as long as I've been here. There's been discussions,
Yeah. Okay, we're
even if
ready.
it's 1%. Norwood, what percentage?
I don't remember. That's not my problem.
It's usually somewhere between 1 and 3. So.
Yeah. Okay, in accordance with Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, the Wetlands Protection Act, and the Town of Walpole Wetlands Protection Bylaw, notice is hereby given of the intent of Michael Connors for the expansion of existing dwellings, construction of a parking lot, and stormwater management systems at 255 Union Street within the 100-foot buffer zone and 200-foot riverfront area of Trapole Brook. Plans are on file at the Conservation Commission office. The public hearing on the above matter will be held in room 112, Walpole Town Hall, 135 School Street, on January 24th, 2018, beginning at 7:15 p.m. All interested persons are requested to be present. Now, let's see. The Board of Sewer and Water Commission reviewed all available information with regard to the above subject. Was decided to invite the applicant into our February 12th, 2017 meeting to review and discuss their utility plans. Therefore, this board would like to reserve the right to comment until after this meeting. Assistant Treasurer. As of this date, there are no outstanding taxes due. Margaret Walker, Town Engineer. Is everything on this relevant? This couple of pages? 3 pages?
Just drainage.
Board of Health voted they have no concerns at this time.
Yeah, I'm gonna meet with Maggie.
Okay. All right, just, I would just read the drainage issues.
Okay. On sheet 3 of 4, it is indicated that the pipe located to the rear of the existing barn that precisely carried stream flow under the barn is to be abandoned. The method of abandonment, fill in or remove, should be specified. With the abandonment of this existing drainage pipe from the pond, any other existing or planned connections from the pond to the intermittent stream should be shown on the plan in order to confirm that the pond doesn't get backed up. The method of abandonment of the existing concrete channel should also be specified and shown on the plan. Proposed work to discontinue the channel located near wetlands flag 3 through 10 should be discussed and shown on the plan. The developer's engineer should clarify how the floodplain was drawn on the site plan, as the firm for this area appears to show that the floodplain extends pictorially off Union Street onto this site along its frontage with Union Street. In addition, his stormwater management calculations at the top of the page indicate that much of the site lies within the 100-year floodplain. The ZBA should discuss whether or not a special permit for work within the floodplain area is required. The detention basin cross-section should be modified to show both stone check dams, which are shown on the plan view. There should be notes placed on the plan, grading arrows indicating that the portion of the tributary to the detention basin is indeed graded toward it, since flow to this basin is proposed as entirely overland flow. On-site soil test data should be shown on the plans. The detention basin cross-section should show the depth to seasonal high groundwater. There should be a minimum clearance of 2 feet below the bottom system component. The stormwater calculations the developer's engineer indicates on page 3 that he is using a Rawls rate of 8.27 inches per hour based on sand soils. However, the on-site test pit showed sandy loam for approximately the first 34 inches. Sandy loam has a Rawls rate of 2.41 inches per hour. He should confirm that the design of the basin places the recharge into the sandy soil layer in order to count on the higher Rawls rate. The developer's engineer should explain how a portion of the existing E2 existing watershed is to be redirected away from Union Street toward the wetlands. If this is by means of downspouts, the piping and discharge points should be shown on the plans. Within the supplied O&M plan, there is a reporting requirement specified. Page A5, the Conservation Commission may want to have the report amended to indicate that their commission specifically receives the yearly report. Have you had seen this?
I'll be meeting with Maggie to go over all these.
Okay. Representing the applicant?
Dan Merrican with Merrican Engineering. With me tonight is Mike Connors. Mike lives in East Walpole. He bought this property as an investment property. I think many of you are familiar with it. 255 Union Street is the last residential property on Union Street before you get to the commercial areas on along Route 1. Was formerly owned by the Foster family. Has 3 structures on it. A house. The house has been used historically for multifamily apartment units. A cottage in the back, which was historically used as an apartment unit, and then the barn, which was not historically used for an apartment. Mike's proposal is to go in and renovate the house, basically renovate the interior of the house, put 4 units in there, renovate the cottage, put a unit in there, and then take the barn and renovate that and put 3 units in there. So it'd be a total of 8 units, a mixture of 1 and 2 bedroom units. We have, from a wetland standpoint, we have Trapole Brook. Obviously, Trapole Brook proper runs right along the property line here, has a riverfront area associated with it. There's an offshoot of Trapole Brook that runs through here. This is intermittent. And I think, as you know, there's a man-made pond back here. Mr. Foster built it, as far as I know. It's controlled. There's basically a weir structure with batter boards, concrete weir structure in the intermittent stream bed, and that basically feeds water into the pond. And then coming out of the pond, unique, there's a 12-inch pipe that comes out of the pond that leads down into a channel that goes through the basement of the barn. So you walk into the basement of the barn. There's a concrete floor. There's a formed channel right through the basement. And then it goes out the front of the building through a pipe. Obviously, all built by Mr. Foster with no permits, to the best of our knowledge. So what we're proposing to do, obviously, it's not.
I'd like you to bring that up in
Sure.
the middle here so that the people
So
in
you
the
guys can see
commission
it?
can see it.
Bring this up here. So, not great practice to have a little stream run through the barn. So we are looking to discontinue that. It doesn't consist of much. As I say, they get this little length of 12-inch pipe, that would be blocked off, and then it drops into this stone-lined channel here. There's really no vegetation down there. And then in the barn, as I say, it's a concrete slab with a trough formed into it. So the extent of discontinuing this is basically just eliminating this little patch of intermittent stream bed, which is a rock line bed. So we're just going to fill it in and plug the pipe. The pond level is controlled by this weir structure out in the wetland with a batter board system. So it's not going to affect how the pond operates. The pond elevation will be controlled by that batter board configuration.
Dan, excuse me, what was the purpose of it, do you know? Why?
Aesthetic, I'm guessing. I don't know. I never asked his daughter that question. I don't know why he did it.
No, I mean, what is the purpose of the trough in the barn? For
I think he just wanted a stream running through his barn.
oh, that, okay, all right.
His own storyline.
He worked for the Army Corps of Engineers, you know, so he was an engineer. He liked water stuff.
Yeah, all right, okay,
He just kind of did it.
okay.
It's a really cool barn. Actually, if you go in there, it's really neat.
Is it, yeah?
The way he redid all the woodwork in the 70s,
Is that right?
and it's pretty cool. It's got all these different levels and terraces, and it's
Yeah, he was going to have a gift shop there. of
He
some
had, I
kind.
guess, an antiques consignment
Yeah.
shop there for a short while.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah. So, it's a pretty cool building, and it's an old building, so good to put it to reuse, renovate it. The outside of the building is going to stay basically the same. I'm going to renovate the interior and make apartments in there. So one of the things that we are looking to do is put a parking lot in. The site doesn't really have much in the way of formal parking, just a basically a residential driveway that sits in there. The bylaw requires 2 spaces per unit, so it requires 16 spaces. We have 1 extra. We have 17. There's an existing driveway entrance here. There's a break in the stone wall, and there's basically people parking here. So there's a gravel driveway that comes in here, and it's kind of all cleared out, and they park in this area. So it was the natural fit for a parking lot. We have flagged the wetlands here, around the man-made pond, and then out in the back. This is all wooded now. We have Trapple Brook up here, inner riparian, outer riparian. So we're proposing work in the buffer zone. This is the buffer zone line. We're not within 25 feet of the PBW. We're not in the floodplain, and we are working in the outer riparian zone. So we're proposing, there's 109,100 square feet of riverfront on the property. We're proposing an 8,500 square foot disturbance, which is 7.7%. So that's below the allowed 10%. The drainage system consists of, basically, as I think you heard in the letters, we're sheet flowing runoff off the parking lot into this very shallow basin. It's a foot deep. We've done this a couple places. It works nice. We did it at the Rockland Credit Union up across the street from the Stop and Shop. Just a real shallow, vegetated, big bottom basin. It'll go through 2 sediment forebays before it gets into this, and then this will just infiltrate into the ground. Good sandy soil, sand and gravel soils. We did a test pit with Maggie out there. So it'll infiltrate all that runoff into the ground. That's basically it in a nutshell. If you have questions.
Landis?
I'm really happy to see this proposal for this site because it is a very unusual site with Trapple Brook and lots of wetlands and history, as well as to the buildings. I have been inside the barn, and it's very unique.
It is.
It's very unique. As is the house is pretty unique as well, and the cottage behind the house, all the property. So it's very nice to see and developed, I think, rather than something big and not fitting the site. I just want to say that because I'm glad to see that. So I was just, well, when I look at projects like this, some of the work is in the riverfront area, so alternative analysis, I mean, usually what we get is just kind of a general alternative analysis. This is what we want to do, but did you look at any
The only other
alternatives to the
place-
parking?
The only other place you could put parking would be back in here.
So any ways to decrease the impervious surface so you can decrease the basin?
Porous pavement is not an option because of depth of groundwater.
Okay.
You know, you need, the bottom of the porous pavement system has to be 2 feet above groundwater. Porous pavement system itself is at least a couple of feet deep.
Mhm.
So we don't have that kind of clearance to groundwater. You have to fill up this parking lot to make that
Right.
work.
Okay.
So in my mind, I mean, if we're infiltrating all this water anyways in this basin, it's more low profile, less fill, less earthwork in the area to do something like this, where we just have, again, this parking, this whole thing is created within a foot to 18 inches of itself, and it's all basically gonna sit at existing grade out there, plus or minus a few inches. The only other place to do a parking lot would be back here, and it's trying to kind of balance competing interests. You know, this would all be in the buffer zone,
Mhm.
whereas, you know, a big chunk of this is outside of the buffer zone, so it just seemed like the best place for it.
Right, that's fine. I was just looking at any way to decrease, and as you said, so zoning requires 16 parking
16
spaces,
spaces.
and you're putting in
Could
17.
technically take 1 space
Mhm.
away.
Right, probably doesn't really matter any. Okay, all right. So that was one of my questions. You meet you're under the 10% for working within the riverfront area. So if there's just a snow removal area, I would put that on the plan.
Yeah, I'll add that. It's going to be, but
Uh-huh.
I'll add that.
Okay, and I would just, and I don't, the man-made channel, I've been out there, I know what it looks like too. It looks relatively easy, and you're not gonna change the flow in the pond and the wetlands is gonna be the same, and so,
This will all be the same.
and the channel in front there will just remain as is, so it'll be just kinda like a backwater to the wetlands.
Yep.
And then the only thing I would suggest to the commission and to the applicant as well is if by the parking lot, there could be a sign just sort of indicating that Trapple Brook riverfront area, the wetlands is part of the Trapple Brook riverfront area, and no salt use or low salt,
Yep.
language like that for the parking
Sure.
lot, so we can keep that out of the wetlands in Chapel Brook.
Yep, makes sense.
So most of those pines that are there now will be coming down.
Well, no, just in this area. I mean, this is all wooded. This
Okay.
whole wetland is a wooded wetland.
Yep.
It's not marshy.
So,
It's all wooded wetlands, so that all stays. And I think we had some conversation at the zoning board about planting some additional trees in here for screening for
Right.
Brookline. So I think we'll be proposing
That's
some
possible.
evergreen trees in there.
okay. I really don't have any other comments. I think it's a good plan for the site.
I have nothing else.
I have nothing.
I have a question about the Chapel Brook extension, or whatever you want to call it.
The offshoot here?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm been well aware of that for a good many years, but I've never seen it. But are you going to fill that in, or just
No.
block it off and leave it at a trench, or?
Well, this whole thing, we're not
Yeah.
touching this at all.
That's
Leave it
it?
alone.
And then what's going to happen? The water still going under the road?
Yes. So Trapple Brook proper runs
I
right
know,
under the road.
I
You
know.
it's 10, 12 feet wide at least. This looks dug to me.
Yeah.
Honestly,
me
it's
too.
about 3 feet wide, it's about this deep. It looks like it was dug at some point in time. And, Mr. Foster used to dam up the main river to try to get water to flow through here. So that's not happening anymore. But, this is all just basically a wooded wetlands with a stream channel running through it. And in the way, when after yesterday's rain, I'm sure there's water running through there now.
Well,
How deep is that pond down?
It's very shallow. It was all dug. Everything that was dug, there's a big pile right here. There's a mountain of what he dug out still there today. So it's just kind of all around that pile.
Yeah, I believe I know the person who did some of the digging there. I heard about that. But I was just wondering whether or not they're still going to go underneath the road.
Yes.
Because there's a sign out there saying Trapple Brook, two places.
Yep, it will. Yeah, we're not changing any of that.
No, okay. Just, the only thing you do is keeping it out of the barn.
That's exactly right.
Okay.
No, nothing.
Well, sounds like a good project, except for it's an old historic house.
We need to save the buildings.
Well-
They are old buildings.
Okay, I agree with that. I've been there, I've seen it, and I'm familiar with the site several times. But now, it sounds to me like you are expecting to continue this until after you solve the
I
other
gotta work with
problems.
Maggie on all our comments. Yes, I have to get that squared away.
So then, I guess I'll entertain a motion to continue the hearing till,
You have some
when
neighbors here
would
who
you?
might wanna
Yeah.
say some things.
Neighbors.
Okay.
I'll just stand next to Mike. Cheryl Hayes, Walpole, 8 Brook Lane. So usually I'm here fighting against development and cutting down of trees and all the other things we've experienced. But we got the opportunity to talk to Mike at the ZBA meeting weeks ago. He assured us that he wasn't gonna cut down the trees, that he wasn't gonna add water to the brook, which runs right through my property, which was refreshing for me to hear. And that he was really gonna leave it untouched, maybe add some screening because of our like for my neighbors. But other than that, he wasn't gonna change the wetlands back there. And I like the fact that someone's just restoring something versus let's build 30 condominiums. So we, as the neighbors, feel that he has like the best interest of that area and the brook, and that he will do a good job. So we're in favor of Mike moving forward with his project.
Anybody else on this project? Okay, I'll accept the motion to continue.
So moved?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Till when?
So continue to February 14th? Is our next meeting?
No.
No?
Mhm.
Oh, yes, it is. It's Valentine's.
Yeah.
It is.
Do we
That's-
have anything else scheduled that day? Is that okay? Is
I don't know if my wife will like it, but
For
that's
you
okay.
guys?
For this guy, I'll do it. Thank you. Have a good night.
7, right? We don't have anything else scheduled.
No, it's at 7.
At 7:15? So the hearing's gonna be continued to February 14th at 7:15.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Dan, can you just coordinate with Maggie and me, because with the stormwater, I'd like to just sit in with that conversation.
Absolutely.
Whatever works for her.
I was afraid that was gonna be a demolish and build.
I
the-
know,
yeah,
I know.
that's-
Yeah,
That's
really
good.
nice project.
Well, we'll start here. We'll see what
That's a good kind of thing.
It's the neighbors.
Okay. And we've got 7:30, okay. Are we ready?
Yeah.
Okay. In accordance with Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, the Wetlands Protection Act, and the Town of Walpole Wetlands Protection Bylaw, notice is hereby given of the intent of Michael Viano. This 11 Ventures LLC to construct a barn, driveway, and associated utilities on Lot 30, Gigi's Way, off North Street, within the 100-foot buffer zone of wetlands. Plans on file at the Conservation Commission office. The public hearing on the above matter will be held in room 112, Walpole Town Hall, 135 School Street, on January 24th, 2018, beginning at 7:30 p.m. All interested persons are requested to be present. Okay. The Board of Health meeting unanimously reiterated there is opposition to building in the 100-foot buffer zone of vegetated wetlands. Assistant Treasurer, there are no outstanding taxes due. Maggie Walker, Town Engineer. Within the Wetlands Protection Act, Form 3, Section C, 7B, page 7 of 9, it is stated that this project is exempt from the provisions of the stormwater management standards because it is a single-family house. However, on the plan, it is stated that caretaker's quarters are proposed, and on page B2 of 9, section A6 of the NOI form, a barn is being proposed. These are not single-family homes. The commission should determine whether or not this proposed use qualifies as single-family homes. If they do not, stormwater management calculations forms information should be filled. Should also be discussed and stated whether this barn is a commercial use or agricultural use, and whether or not these are allowed uses in this rural zone. It should also be clarified as to whether there is also a single-family home to be built elsewhere on this lot, and whether an additional NOI filing would be made. If this lot requires a driveway, which is wider than the 24 feet allowed under the town curb cut policy, and engineering plan must be submitted. The need for a parking lot for portions of the barn, horse trailers, etc., should be discussed and shown on the plan, and mitigation for impervious cover pavement be provided as needed.
So, so this is an email that was from Jack Conroy of the planning board.
Okay, from the planning board. We as the planning board are only involved with the subdivision itself, layout, infrastructure, etc. Anything going on lot is up to lot owner and building department or Concom for wetland issues. That being said, per subdivision approval, the open space area next to Gigi's Way was approved by the planning board to have a barn and paddock. This barn and paddock were also included on the bond by Whitman Homes. The barn and paddock on lot 30 does not take the place of the open space barn and paddock. If they wanted to delete the open space barn and paddock, then they would have to file a new subdivision plan to ask for a modification on this condition. The lone problem in refiling is that this section, open space, is no longer in the book, so no refiling could occur, and the barn and paddock will have to be built on the open space.
And then this is a comment letter from the building commission. Or-
For our discussion, the provision for a guest or caretaker's quarters was once in our bylaw, but was removed from our zoning bylaw sometime in 2014 or before. We do not currently allow anything like this without a special permit at all, and no one has applied for any recently either. I hope this helps.
And these, you don't have to bother with that.
Okay.
I think if I could, Vice Chair, just, there was a little confusion as far as the notice of intent and the plan and the advertisement. So I think first perhaps the applicant should clear that as to actually what the proposal was for. The notice of intent listed a barn, a driveway, associated grading, and the caretaker unit. The plan just shows a house, a caretaker unit. So there's been a little confusion about that because of how the notice of intent and the plan were submitted. So perhaps you want to clear that.
How that confusion came about. I can explain how the confusion came about because.
Well, just explain
Yeah,
what
Rich-
the commission is here to vote on.
Bring the plan up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, there's some guys here, some people. They want to see the cut. So this, actually, or at least a version of this was in front of you before, and it was for a barn and a caretaker's apartment. So when I redid the notice of intent, I really didn't redo it as good as I probably should have, so it still said barn. But there's no barn component with this, right? So, for the record, John Glossick, Glossick Engineering, 46 East Street in East Walpole, and Michael Viano is the owner of the property. So that was a little bit of my mistake, but there's no barn component to this proposal. So it's essentially a caretaker's quarters that's being proposed.
Michael Viano, the owner of HG's Way. I think, as John just pointed out, almost a year ago, we proposed a barn with a caretaker's quarters of this exact same site. The barn is going to be built on open space 1, and the paddock is going to be built, which is adjacent to this property. I'm in the process now, finally, of building out a small horse farm on all of this land. We do require a caretaker's quarters. The objective is to hire a recent grad from the Aggie and the Equine Studies program. Once we get through all the permitting and get ready to build, I have talked to people up there in the administration about that, and they have a lot of great students, and that's the objective. But we need a place for them to stay in order to properly care for the animals and the property and the barn, etc. So, apologies, as John just said, for the mistake on the way it was resubmitted. The language should have been changed to take the word barn out of there, because the barn is not being located there. It will be across the cul-de-sac, right where it's always been permitted. When we submitted it before, because it was a bigger structure, it was going well into the 25-foot no disturb. I know I walked it with Mr. Getz last year, and I think Landis walked it. We discussed at that time in the hearing, you know, the time when it was, there's still a remnant of barbed wire right down by the water's edge, well into the 25-foot no disturb. So that the character of that 25-foot no disturb was meadow. It's been mowed as recently as 4, 5, 6 years ago. This plan, because this is a much smaller structure, pulls it back out just to the edge of the 25-foot no disturb. I have worked with Tom Liddy, who's been on this project for a long time. We do need to do a temporary disturbance and then restoring of the no disturb, but once we're done, that'll be it. We will be back to one of the comments. I'm working with Tom for an overall plan on the rest of Lot 30. There's a lot of issues going on there. There's a farm pond that was created in the 1940s. There's a replication area that was created in the 1980s that is loaded with apparently invasive species. I walked it with Tom. We'll be working for the next several months to develop a plan for the rest of the property. But in order to go forward with the barn this summer, we need to make provision for the caretaker's situation. As to, I did meet with the building inspector. We had a very good discussion about this. There are provisions in the zoning act that deal with agricultural uses, which we think will apply to this particular project. He's asked me to get all the documentation for that. We're working on that, and we're confident that ultimately we can do that. But for now, we need to get our conditions so that we can move forward. With that said, I'll let John take the technical aspects of this.
I think you've seen it before, right? So it's, you know, Gigi's Way, which runs up to North Street right here. There's 2 new houses either side of Gigi's Way, and then there's the barn lot here, and now there's the lot 30, which is the remaining, or this lot here, which you can see in the blow up here. It's 178,000 square feet. So, and as Michael said, there's the pond, which is pretty obvious feature. There's some large trees along here, which we located. We tried to fit this building in here to miss those trees. And Gigi's Way, which is currently under construction, right? So Gigi's Way comes down, ends in a cul-de-sac. It'll have sewer via a force main, because the force main out in North Street, so this will pump up into the force main. It'll have water. The water comes down and goes into the Roscommon, the rest of the Roscommon subdivision over here. It'll have gas, right? There's gas here, and they brought gas down, or they're gonna bring gas down and bring it into the Roscommon subdivision. So, you know, that's it. And then the grading of it, obviously, from here, this is dropping down to the pond. So this building is set up sort of as a walkout in the back to try to limit the disturbance behind the building. But as Michael said, you know, there would be some disturbance that would need to be sort of put back to its natural condition after it's done. We did show a limit of work with some silt barrier here, and then there's a pit driveway just for one car, maybe two cars on that side there. You did show the rooftop drains going into dry wells that would be able to store a half inch of rain. In Massachusetts, 43 inches of rain or so, most of it comes in half-inch increments or less. Very few of them, of our storms are actually more than half-inch. So that's pretty much it. I think you've seen it before, so I won't bore you too much longer with the details, but that's the proposal that's on the table for you guys. We do understand that, you know, there's most likely a house and maybe another outbuilding that's gonna go on this lot. And if they are within 100 feet of wetlands, which most likely they're gonna be, will require additional filings. As far as the stuff with the town engineer, I don't think that it's kind of funny when, I don't know if you ever filled out one of those forms, but they only give you like 4 choices. So, but I think it goes to, I mean, you can go up to a 4-family residential subdivision, and you don't need to file in stormwater management regulations. So I think it goes to sort of the extent of what you're doing, not necessarily exactly what you're doing. So that would be my answer to the town engineer's comment regarding that we said it was a single-family house. There just isn't any other box to check. So, and it's all electronic now, so it's not like it's not like you can write something else in. But it's pretty obvious that it's a minor, very minor project, a very small building with no real impact to any stormwater requirements. So, Uriah and Michael can answer any questions you might have.
Landis?
I would just, so there still is a question if it's allowed by zoning or not, and within the Wetlands Protection Act regulations, it does state that the applicant should show the commission that they've applied or received local permits, which include special permits or zoning permits, not subdivision plans. But so I think that the commission should, that you should provide that to the commission. My conversation and email with the building inspector today was that it wouldn't be allowed. So I think that needs to be clarified. If you need a special permit or if it is allowed, I'm not sure about the agricultural requirement, because even though under the bylaw there's a minimum of 25 feet, no alteration. So this is really squishing it right up against the 25 foot. And there's a lot of wetlands, there's a lot of pond, there's a lot of development that's occurring in this whole wetland system. So I just think the commission should review each project as to what it's altering and how close and how much of the buffer zone, and there's gonna be a house in this lot as well, but just things to consider. As far as the structure and the stormwater and the infiltration and all that, it's, you know, I don't have any comments, just that the structure is being put right on the 25-foot no alteration area. So it will be a temporary disturbance for the setting of the foundation. Is that what you're saying? Yeah. But I think the zoning issue, if you have to apply or not, should be clarified. That's it.
My concerns were the same as they were a year ago about where it is, and similar to what Landis just said, you're putting it smack dab on the line of 25. You're calling it a walkout. You're walking out into the 25. So it looks the same as I did a year ago, and I have concerns about it the same as I did a year ago, and I just don't like the location of it. Echoing what Landis said, and I feel the same way as I did a year ago, and I don't like the location.
Jim?
It will not be a walkout. There won't be a door there.
Okay, all right.
Why did you say
I
walkout?
think I meant it set up as a walkout. In
You
other
said-
words, unlike
Okay,
a typical.
And that could be a condition.
okay.
Yeah, so it's just set up that way. In other words, the ground behind the building
Right.
is essentially 6 or 7 feet below the ground that's in
Okay.
front of the building. I didn't,
I
so
gotcha.
for us, we call it a walkout.
And we can have a condition that there's not a door there, I don't, it's not
What-
gonna be.
Why not more to the left of where it is right now? Is there any reason that, you know, to, you know, closer to the North Street?
That would be the side door, that's the kitchen.
No, I mean, that you're putting it right there.
Putting it
What if you
more
slid it,
here?
I mean, what if you slid the whole thing to the left? Is there any,
There's a huge, beautiful pasture oak there.
is that right?
As it is, I have a concern that this end of the house needs to be cut shorter to keep it away from the roots.
Oh, I see.
That tree needs to be saved.
I
It's
see.
beautiful, and it's old.
Is that right?
It's-
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I've already spent a little bit of money to having some tree guys do a little bit of work on it, but it needs,
Okay.
once we get going, I'm gonna have somebody go through that whole tree.
So it's
The
kind of
other
why.
two oaks are actually pretty nice as well,
Mm-hmm.
and worth saving,
Okay,
but that one's particularly attractive.
okay. So that's why you situated it where it is?
Yes.
Got it, okay. All right.
I don't have anything.
Well, it seems that, you know, this project's been around a long time, but I have to agree with what has already been said. I just wondering if there's any other way with that property that you have there, there's for the caretaker's house. I think we're pushing the envelope on the 25-foot line.
There are a lot of wetlands on that lot. It's a 4-acre lot, it's a big lot.
Mhm.
Obviously, the pond is a wetland.
Well,
This
there's a
whole
pond
area.
there, yeah, but there's a lot of land there, and I,
And the barn and the paddock are right here, so it's
Mhm.
just a natural place for a person who's managing that to be able to get to. Because to get across to this part of the lot, you gotta do this, and we'll be, well, we actually have an order of conditions for this crossing, but we'll be back for this whole lot. This is, the rest of these 4 acres, it's gonna take months to come up with a comprehensive plan that we can present without just winging it to the commission.
well, I would think that there'd be some other way that you could put the barn, the barn and the house and, or barn, and I don't know how big the house is gonna be. And if it's just a caretaker's little place, it's bound to be expanded.
No, there's no room to expand, Roger, but this is only 600 square feet. It's probably 1 bedroom, it's a studio or a 1 bedroom, that's it, and the kitchen and the large open living area.
And what can we do to prevent, for it to be expanded?
There's nowhere to go. You know, we're at the setback line, and this is the wetland line, and there's nowhere to go. And and that's all that's needed. That's perfectly adequate for an 18 to 20-year-old person who's just graduated from the Aggie, who's in the Equine Studies program to deal with, you know, it's a small, it's a 4 or 5 stall, or 4 or 5 horse farm. It's a part-time job. You give them housing, maybe a small stipend, and they can have a regular job as well and still take care of the horses. But it's so much better for the horses to have somebody there, because I travel and I'm not mucking up the stalls, so.
Well, I would think you would want to be closer to the barn, but
We can't, because the planning board in its wisdom restricted that parcel from having any residential. I'm not sure why they did that, but they did.
I'll pass it on.
That wasn't a pass, but okay. All right, I have several things to say. One of which is, yeah, we saw this, I think, over a year ago, and there were lots and lots of continues. And I think I was almost singularly responsible for saying, let's reconsider our no vote, because we gave it a no vote. And then I was like, let's reconsider. And I had 2 reasons for wanting to reconsider. One, I guess, is off the table. I just thought it was outrageous to have animal waste that close to the wetland, and horse feces and horse urine. The second thing I think is still on the table. I think you need to show us that this is the only alternative, but we don't even have the whole lot here. We have the whole lot in the locus piece, but I remember particularly saying, where's the whole lot? Where's the potential even for a development, you have potential footprints of houses. It doesn't have to be the exact shape of the house, but there's like a square that represents, where's the approximate footprint for the house and its outbuilding, which presumably is a garage or something? Where's the driveway? And then why can't we see the caretaker's cottage there? I'm concerned about all sorts of things, including a comment from the building inspector, whom I just dealt with, just trying to build a garage. What's the setback for a building in a residential area?
So it's 30 feet, but this isn't an open space plan, so it's 50%. It's 15 feet.
All right, 15 feet. Wow. Okay, so then but still, we have a comment from the building inspector via email to Landis that says that it's not over with him, and I believe it.
He's talking about the use.
Okay, all right, so it's about the use. All right, so I have more. So I agree that we need to know that this can be put on, that the zoning board is okay with their piece of the puzzle. I don't like that it's all being sort of done piecemeal, and I really do want to see the entire property with some possibilities of where things could go. I took a quote off the zoning board website. Maybe this is not the exact quote, maybe in my paraphrase, but something to the effect of, exceptions are not about personal preference. Having grown up on a farm, I get the part about wanting the youngster who's mucking out the stalls to be close by, but that's a preference, and we're here not to design the perfect stable situation. We're here to protect the wetlands. So zoning says it's not about personal preference, it's about showing that you've got some kind of hardship. I still am not seeing the evidence for the hardship. And then as for it taking months and months to figure out where the house and garage are gonna go, that's why I started by saying it's been over a year where you knew that this commission was not pleased with that location. So for a year, you could have been maybe taking little cutouts and placing them different places and going, how can we possibly make this work with 2 buildings or 3 buildings or whatever? Putting the caretaker above the garage or something, which probably is allowed.
With all due respect,
yeah.
We've been focused on larger issues in other offices in this town hall on the project, and only now are we able to really, can I focus on this?
But next time we need to see what zoning says, and we need to see the entire thing. You got room on this piece of paper with the potential places where things could go, so that this ends up looking like an extreme hardship. Because right now it doesn't look like a hardship. This is the only possible place you could put the caretakers.
Hardship has to do with the variance, which we're not seeking.
Oh, is hardship the wrong word? I'm sorry. That you want an exception. So if there's an exception to our all right, you're giving Landis a look. If am I using the wrong word? No, okay.
We're not looking for an exception. We're looking for an order of conditions to build a structure.
I'm going to say no to it being that close to the. It's right up against 25. So I said no over a year ago. But I also am saying, how come you don't show us what it's all going to look like? So that we can see that the caretaker's cottage just absolutely has to be there.
If I could, Betsy,
Sure.
the purview of the commission under the bylaw
Yeah.
is the no alteration area, and it does say a minimum of 25 feet. In times, if there's resource areas that we consider should have more than 25 feet, we extend the 25 feet. Most people who submit plans to the commission has now automatically put the 25 foot.
I'm gonna
So
give
I
an
think that's an issue the commission could.
I'm going to give an example.
discuss.
Okay, so I'm going to give an example of what I was meaning. If I'm using the wrong words, if it's not an exception, let's say that you had someone with a teeny tiny house lot. We have them all over Walpole, with the wetlands right up against the backyard, and the hardship, which we've heard before in the commission, was we need to have a play area for the kids, but the yard goes like that. Please, 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 can't we do a little bit of filling right up to the 25-foot and et cetera, et cetera? We'll go, okay, we'll do it. So that's what I mean by we do grant exceptions, but it's not a casual thing. We have to see that there's some sort of urgent need for it. I'm not seeing the urgent need for this. That's what I mean.
If I'm reading you right, you're saying that there may be other alternatives.
Yes, I'm
rather
trying
than
to say that.
Pushing it right in.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
I think that's.
I'm also aware that there are people watching this on television, if there are, saying, wait a minute, I was before the commission and they made me move my swimming pool back a foot, you know, because it was like right up against the 25-footer. They made me move the kids' play set back, or they made me move the kids' playhouse back. So here's a building that doesn't exist yet, and given the size of the lot, people are going, wow, that's a big lot. Wonder what the Conservation Commission's going to do. I don't think that we should allow this. I think it's going to make us look as though we've got some other priorities besides protecting the wetlands.
Okay. I'm going to add to that. I look at this plan, and there isn't anything that indicates that there's a elevation problem here. I don't see the contour lines that indicate the difference, the height where the street is and where the slope down to the wetland is. Nothing to indicate that there's a steep slope there. And I want to see that. I also want to see how you can build this retaining wall right along this line without going over the line and destroying part of that area that we've protected in our bylaw. So I want to see that. I'm not going to get into, because it isn't our jurisdiction, the issue of whether the building department, any other town board approves of a house for a caretaker to live in. To me, it's a house, regardless of who's going to be there. It's a house, and it ought to be treated like one. And the fact that you've shown roof drains going into recharge units, that's fine. My only contention is that in this day and age, with the problems that we're having with storms and stormwater, is the amount of water you're planning to allow the system to recharge is not adequate. I would like to see, in keeping with the way the climate is changing, that we should be changing the amount we recharge and not recharging the minimum from a system that was 25 years old. So that's my opinion here. I'd like to see this issue whether a caretaker's house is a house or is not a house, and get that out of the way before we approve anything that somebody else is going to overrule. The fact that this is proposed for a house and it has a sewer connection that eliminates the problem that we would have had before with a barn sitting on that same spot, and the effects of animal waste leaching into the wetland and the pond. So that problem goes away in that spot, but it moves to somewhere else. And I approve of Michael's concern about that tree. That tree is an unusual tree. It's worth saving if we can do that. So I'm not one that always looks to see if it's okay to cut down trees. I've cut down some trees myself because they were endangering my house. But this was an unusual tree there, and it deserves a little respect and to be protected. But I want to see how you can build that retaining wall without going into the restricted area, and I want to see the elevations in that area so that we know what we're looking at.
So, Mr. Chairman, I can add some more spot grades around the building. Maybe we can blow that up somewhere and put it around the building. I mean, I do this all the time, so it's easy.
I know you do.
195.5 is the top of concrete here, and you can see the elevations out in the road, 194, 192, 190. And the reason there aren't a lot of finished grade contours is because of the wall, right? They put the wall, and that sort of takes the place of the finished grade. We're not gonna be doing any grading around the back, okay?
Well, let's have them,
Put top and bottom of wall.
let's have the contours go right down, fill that area with contour lines so that we see
Yeah.
that
yeah.
it's a slope.
Yes, but what I'm gonna do is take that and they'll blow it up to like
Okay.
10 scale or something, so it actually, to put all of that stuff in there would kind of be tough to do. So we'll just blow it up somewhere and stick it on the plan and put all of that. The gravity wall that we're showing, they only go down 18 inches when they build these walls, and they put in crushed stone, and then this is a stone-strong wall, so it's 44 inches deep, so to speak. And
I know how they build them.
Yep, these 1.5 blocks that then they fill up with stone as they're going up. There's 2-inch batter on every 18 inches, so they should be able to build that without going into the 25-foot.
Okay, so if you're going to put in contours there at Al's request, what about my request that we see the entire lot with some possibilities?
I'm gonna let Michael answer that. I should do whatever.
Because why is that not a legitimate request?
It's a
Since I
legitimate
asked it
request,
over a year ago.
But it's a legitimate request, but
Yeah.
I'd have to find out.
So, but, as I said in my opening remarks, I've retained Lucas Environmental, Tom Rudy. We've already met on the site. We actually missed Landis by 15 minutes that day. We've walked all of this. It's gonna take 3 or 4 months. It's not so much to find locations, because there are only a few locations where you can, where there aren't wetlands, but to develop a plan. If you recall, during the ANRAD for this project, 3.5, 4 years ago, we did a site walk, and the commission asked us, and I said at that time, and I'll say it again tonight, would we be willing to address the pond? And I said at the end, when we're ready to deal with lot 30, so we're going to try to come up with a program to maybe improve this pond. And perhaps we can satisfy the commission, perhaps we can't. Tom's just starting on it. This whole replication area, we were spoken to during the ANRAD process at a hearing here. And apparently, as Tom and I walked it, he said, that's horrible, invasive species, there's another one over there.
As well as I believe you kind of look up to the replication area from the street.
Right, and what's gonna need to happen is apparently, this isn't my area of expertise, is to him develop a plan to, like a long-range plan to remove invasives. We need to do some work along the stream that we've talked a little bit with the commission. This is a comprehensive plan for this whole lot. And it's gonna take 3 or 4 or 5 months to come up with it before we can file it. We need to build a barn this summer, and we need to have a place for a caretaker.
But I also don't see that as
And
a
that's the
typical,
logical place.
I don't see it as a typical argument to say, we've got a large lot, several buildings going in, and because we haven't figured out the rest of it, we need to permit this one little corner here. I just haven't seen that argument before,
We're not arguing.
or that suggestion before.
We're just
I meant
applying-
argument
we're just
sort of the-
applying for an order of conditions to build a caretaker's house in that location because it's the best location.
You haven't proven, you haven't suggested, you haven't shown us that it's the best location. I guess that's part of the problem. You're saying it's the best location, you're saying it's impossible to get any additional information in a timely way, so therefore we should just assume it's the best location. And I have not seen that before on this commission.
But if you put that structure somewhere else on the property, how do you get to it?
And that's from an efficient, so then the person who's working, managing this whole 5-acre barn, horses, animals, would have to come down here and somewhere in this part of the lot, over here, would have to traverse that. You know,
Yeah,
if
wouldn't you have
if
to-
there's a sick horse in the middle of the night, they've gotta get over there. It's
But
just-
wouldn't you have to have a road or something
There's
going
going to
in?
be a driveway, it's been permitted.
No, right, but up there, but how do you get from, let's say, the
From here?
corner down to Gigi's Way?
I'm sorry, from here,
Or yeah, or just back down to where the barn's gonna be. How would that person get there?
they'd have to come back.
Driveway.
And, yeah, they'd have to drive.
But is there gonna be what, is there
There's going to be
gonna
a driveway
That's
here.
what
be,
this
so they'd have to drive all the way around, they couldn't walk.
Could, no.
That's
they
what
could
this
walk,
shows right here, is eventually there's a driveway here.
but That's actually
So
correct.
eventually there's a driveway that goes to the rest of this lot, right here.
So this structure is just in a buffer zone? It's not in a wetlands area, is that right?
It's in the buffer zone and it's right against the 25-foot no disturb in your local bylaw.
So what's the harm to this area that you're concerned about? I don't see any harm to an area.
As Landis said, it's a minimum of 25 feet.
Okay, that's not
That's,
the
well,
question.
and the second thing is that this is not the way, we like to have all the information, and all the information is missing here. The rest of the lot, the idea of this hardship on the young man who's mucking out the stalls, not our purview, not our thing. You know, we don't care
Well,
about
the
any of that.
question is, what is the harm you're concerned about? That if you put that structure there, what harm flows from that?
It's a whole Concom worth of harm. I don't know. It's what we've been doing for the last bunch of years. I don't know. I don't know if we're gonna have a discussion about whether or not, you know, we've got to.
The reason I'm opposed to it is you're hard up against the 25. You're right as close to that pond as you can get with that structure. Why there?
And you've
They haven't-
got-
They haven't a compelling reason why there.
They don't have a
No,
compelling
the
reason.
question is, what is the environmental harm posed by that structure? I can't get an answer.
Okay, well,
Just
that could
the
be too
potential.
deep a question for us right now, right? I mean, we're
That's what our job is.
that's right.
What
Our
is the harm,
job
what
is
is the
to
harm
protect.
for any project that we have?
Yeah.
We set back 25. What is the harm to any project?
Yeah, why not?
wet-
I agree. I think
Okay, well,
there's
we
a problem
happen to
with
think
that.
that
But if there's no harm, I don't see what our concern is. And nobody can give me a rational answer to that.
So a previous commissioner, no longer with us, actually measured what 25 feet was, and I forget what she came up with. She actually brought in a ruler that day. What was her name? I'm missing her, but,
Oh, Kristen?
yeah, yeah.
Can I make a suggestion? Is
Oh,
perhaps
sure.
the commission have a site visit out to the site to
Sure.
see the location
Sure.
of the structure within the buffer zone.
Okay.
We have extended the 25-foot. I mean, it's a minimum of 25 foot that's written in the bylaw. There is a pond, there is a stream, and the relationship to this building to those structures, there's only 25 feet in between. There's lots of data out there that the closer you put a structure to the wetlands, that the potential impact to the wetlands occurs, especially if it's a residential. There's incremental cutting of vegetation and incremental encroachment towards the wetlands. So right now you're having a structure, a residential structure, right on the 25-foot, no alteration, with a pond, with a stream, and in an area where there's a lot of development towards the wetlands. So I think it's worth the commission to go out and take a look. If they go, take a look and the 25 feet's enough to protect the resource areas, I think it's a moot point.
Protected from what? That's what I'm trying to understand.
Incremental alteration of the buffer zone
Buffer
towards
zone.
the wetlands.
Right.
It's what we do all the
What is
time to protect.
what is
I'd be
the,
happy to meet the commission out there. I think it's
what is the
useful.
incremental?
The incremental is when
Expansion.
residents move into properties such as this, and it's very close to the wetlands, they often start cutting down trees, they start cutting down brush, they start filling, they cut their lawns and they dump the material out in the backyard, they do their leaves, and that goes in the backyard. If they wash their cars, they do a lot of activities on the site,
okay, hold on.
which is an incremental alteration
That's
to the
not the
buffer zone.
proposal in front of us. We can only deal what's in front. There's a caretaker unit of 600.
You cannot just say, what the use right now is for an 18-year-old to come in and do this, but how about 10, 20 years
And
down the
Jim,
road
we're
from
not out
now?
of line with this.
We
It's a
can't
long
worry
term.
about hypotheticals on
Not a
every single
hypothetical.
project. You'd never build anything in
Not a
this country.
hypothetical.
Of course
There's
it
lots
is.
there's a lot of data out there that incremental alteration of buffer zone causes potential alteration to the wetlands.
Then we have to evaluate
That's
what's
why
the
we have it in our
likelihood of that
bylaw.
happening here.
Then I say the commission should go out there and take a look
I
and
would
make a
invite you to
judgment
do
call
that,
in the
because
field.
if you do that, to Landis's point, you will see that there is it's nothing that hasn't been altered for the last 50 years in this area.
And that's what I would suggest, that would put this to rest.
And it would indicate, especially with, and I said it earlier to, we can have a condition that there's no door out the back, because we're not gonna build it that way anyway. And with this, there's just no way, there's no reason for anybody to go back there.
Okay.
To plant grass or anything else, so,
Take a look.
that would be, your point's well taken, but I think we can see it on site.
Otherwise, the commission wouldn't have voted the regulations for a no alteration area if they didn't consider that that was an important aspect to protecting the wetlands. That's why it was voted. That's why. it's
Right, and
there.
I think that's why every proposal has to be evaluated on its own merits, rather than
With
this.
all the
this-
data.
Right, so go out and
Well, yeah,
take a
but-
look at it.
When- And the data,
the
we have a
data
little
we have-
snippy
the
piece
data
of a
we
lot.
have- I think we have all the data we need.
So I don't,
But I think we've
and
always,
neither does Al.
I think we've always balked at structures right up against the 25. I think we consistently have, as long as I've been on the
Sure,
commission.
sure.
We've always said, why up, there's no way you're not gonna go into the 25 if you're
Right.
right up against it. There's no
Anyone
way.
who's ever tried to
We-
do it
we've been
watching
consistent- we've
television
done
now
that-
is going,
I think we've done that
"What's-"
fairly consistently.
Yeah, people are gonna be like, whoa, what are you gonna do tonight?
But let's take a look at it. I
Yeah.
think it's good to look at it, take a
Yeah.
look.
Okay, we need to set a time on the
have-
schedule for a site visit.
Audience questions?
Yeah, we can still, we'll still get to that.
We'll get to that. We need to set a time for a site visit, and
Saturday?
obviously, we're not going to conclude this project tonight, so when are we going to do that?
Saturday?
This week on Saturday?
It'd be a week from I can't be there this week, I'm already going.
I think a week from Saturday.
The 3rd, it's not Super Bowl.
No, the next day is, right?
The 3rd is Conservation Conference Day.
No,
that's
February.
March.
Oh, you're right.
You're a month.
Okay, so
February.
February 3rd?
Okay,
Does that make sense?
okay.
I appreciate it. We'll stick to building for you.
At what time?
Like 9 o'clock?
Sure.
9 o'clock, okay. Okay.
Don't forget the audience.
So now, is anybody in the room here that is, has concern about the environmental aspects of this project? It has nothing to do with traffic or any of that other stuff? If so, give me your name and we'll listen to you.
Buckwood Drive. Earlier, you indicated that the notice of intent had a mistake in it. Would that require a new notice of intent? And a refiling, a reposting?
No.
I don't believe so.
I don't think so.
Because the correct information is being discussed at the hearing.
Okay, and you also indicated that the building inspector said that there would be, the caretaker's quarters was not allowed. If that's the case, does this make this process redundant?
That's not our concern. It's, all we have to figure out is what is the impact on the protected areas? What the building inspector does is not our concern.
If it's not our concern, then why do we read aloud all the things from all
That's a
the
good
other boards?
question. That's a good question.
Okay.
In the Wetlands Protection Regulations, it does state that the applicant should provide the Conservation Commission that they've applied for all appropriate local permits, including special permits. That's what we were asking. It
So
doesn't
if-
stop the process, we would like that information.
Is the building inspector saying no then?
We don't know what he's saying.
So he's asking us
Yes,
for
yes,
more
we do.
data.
We have an email that states that a caretaker unit is not allowable use under the current bylaw.
So it would seem like this is redundant then.
Well, they can still move forward with the application. It doesn't mean they can construct. It only means it's approved under the Conservation Commission. They still have to get all the applicable permits and requirements, meet all applicable requirements.
And my last question is, how does this relate to the open space residential development? Does this require a modification at all? No.
Well, there was an email that was read from the chairman of the planning board in regards to that.
Okay. And he said, no?
He didn't say.
I said no.
I'm not vice chair. I wasn't even on the planning board when this was allowed.
He just wrote this week.
I think he was just addressing
Must
to
have
the
voted on it
activity.
because it came from the whole board.
He was just addressing the activity on the open space parcel.
And that the barn had to be on that parcel. The barn couldn't be on this parcel.
Right.
Okay, so.
I know that, right.
So that was what that letter was about. It wasn't about anything else. Okay, so the applicant has to deal with the building department to find out if they can construct a residence there or not. That's not our job. That's somebody else's.
Okay, now, my only last question is, Michael now owns this property. Lot 30 belongs to you.
You asking me or telling me?
I'm asking you.
Yes, I do.
That's correct. We did get documentation regarding that.
Okay, thank you.
You own it individually as opposed to the LLC?
I am an individual. I'm building this for my own home.
Why is the applicant SR2 Ventures?
SR2 is the landowner at the time of the application. A deed has subsequently been recorded last week. I own it individually. At some point, the attorney, Jim, will create some kind of a common trust or something, because if we're running a horse, if we're gonna have horses, we need to do some liability limitations, but I don't have those there yet, so.
Anybody else?
Yes, I apologize, I came in a few minutes late. I'm a neighbor.
Can you just say your
Name and-
name and?
My name is Jeff Flourish, I live at 24 Arlington Lane. So I'm down at the cul-de-sac in Arlington Lane. So I look across into the area, and this is down the street.
So
So,
you're at the
This
wrong
is the
hearing, next hearing,
It's the next.
next hearing.
oh, okay.
So you're not late.
You're early.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll continue the hearing.
So after the February 3rd, it would be the February 14th meeting again. You want the February 14th meeting, or the next one's February 28th? You want to check your wife? No, you don't have a wife, that's right, sorry. I just say that
No
because it's
jokes.
Valentine's Day,
I
sorry.
know what it is. I'll go with it, why not? I'll probably be sorry. I was trying to get him, no, I'm kidding.
Do you have a question?
Yeah. Yeah, Brian Vanderpool, 16 W Road. Question I have is, if the zoning has been changed, and not just to beat this to death, but what I'm trying to understand, if the zoning has been changed, and the dwellings for this application for a caretaker is no longer allowed in the town of Walpole, you know, everybody on this board puts a lot of time in, they do it on their own dime. How is it gets this far without even something approving from the zoning board or whatever? Why does it get this far and we dealt well with this much time on something that is not allowed at this point in time in the town of Walpole?
That's not our our jurisdiction to decide. We're only here to decide whether this can be, something like this can be done in regards to the wetlands and the rivers and streams on a property. It has nothing to do with zoning in that respect. So he has to argue with the zoning board and solve the problem there, in addition to solving the problem with us.
I sometimes wonder, is this how all towns do it? Up, I never know, but I mean,
In honesty, in the regulations, we could have not taken the application until this issue was addressed. They applied for the permit, or we got a document saying that they didn't have to apply for it. It's in the regulations. So, but it's something that's sort of evolved. Sometimes when the application comes in, we get information from other departments, and it takes a while for it to catch up. That's why at this point, the commission will not say we won't render a decision. We just want the information. So it's up to the applicant to work with the building inspector on that aspect of it, and the commission working on it in this aspect.
Just like the zoning board, when they hand us an application, if everything is there, we have to accept it, and we have 21 days in which to act. If we don't act in 21 days, they can go ahead and do whatever they want as it was proposed.
If it's accepted or approved?
It wouldn't have to be approved by us because we didn't act.
If he applied with the zoning board to build this dwelling, at that point, you're not on a 21-day clock.
No, we're on the clock when they hand us the application here for conservation.
Even if it's against the zoning bylaws.
It has nothing to do with that.
We didn't know that at that time the application came in. We accepted it as it was.
I'm amazed, for as busy as this board is, and again, everybody puts in so much of their own time, that we don't have some type of a check and balance to kind of keep the train on the tracks and not let these issues that keep popping up, that so sucks up so much valuable time.
It's the way it is with almost every project in this country.
okay, but,
Doesn't work that way.
It just
well
doesn't.
then, how come when you're building a garage, you have to go to each of, you have
That's
to
what I'm
wa-
saying.
No, but you have
That's the
to
way-
get it checked off by each thing, and then the building inspector will let you do it. So it's not that we don't do this, it's that we seem to do it piecemeal. And other boards are troubled by it too, I know, having sometimes sat in on them, that to see little bits and pieces of a huge comprehensive project is really frustrating. And we do read aloud other boards' comments. To do what with them? Nothing. I listen to them, and I try to take them seriously.
Like I said, I think they're a lot of times irrelevant. Unfortunately, there's no
We
such
have
thing
nothing
as a
better to do
lead
anyway.
agency
We like to
here.
be here.
I see you guys on TV, you just.
We've got-
from the time. But if I may, that's a good point. The wire inspector won't even talk to me unless I have a building permit. So, all this time here, on your own dime, which we appreciate, why does it get this far? And that's my
Okay, we have to continue this to February, what day? 14.
7:30.
7:30. Somebody make a motion to that effect, please?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, Mike.
Good night.
Okay.
So, thank you. And it's okay.
Okay. We ready?
Yep.
How you doing? Good.
In accordance with Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40 of the Wetlands Protection Act, and the Town of Walpole Wetlands Protection Bylaw, notice is hereby given of the intent of John Hassenjager to construct single-family dwelling, driveway, and associated utilities on Lot 12A and 11 Arlington Lane within the 100-foot buffer zone of wetlands. Plans are on file at the Conservation Commission office. The public hearing on the above matter will be held in room 112, Walpole Town Hall, 135 School Street, on January 24th, 2018, beginning at 7:45 p.m. All interested persons are requested to be present. Maggie Walker, Town Engineer. The applicant should be required to provide copies of any easement documents which give them the right to use the 25-foot easement. The building commissioner should be consulted as to whether the driveway now requires a common driveway special permit since it will serve 2 homes. The plan is delineating a gravel turnaround for emergency vehicle access. It is strongly recommended that the fire department review this turnaround for adequacy. In addition, the fire department should be requested to examine whether their emergency response vehicles can access this second home on the driveway as is currently configured. It's strongly recommended that the owners of both these homes have a sign with the address and directional arrows installed at the curb cut onto Arlington Lane. The cover page provided to this department indicates that this filing is for both lots 11 and 12A. However, the NOI form, Wetlands Protection Act Form 3, only indicates in section A1 that work is being proposed on lot 12A. If any work is proposed on lot 11, it would seem that this NOI form should refer to both lots and encumber both lots. The need for location of a water meter pit for this house should be determined before construction. From the Board of Health. The Board of Health, as at its January 16, 2018 meeting, voted unanimously to reiterate their long-standing objection to any building in wetland areas, especially the 100-foot buffer of vegetated wetlands. From the town treasurer, there are no outstanding taxes due.
Oh, yeah, this just, they did send in the easement, for lot 11 that states, a driveway is allowed across our agreement. Access and utilities.
Okay, I don't need to read that.
No, you don't, no.
Okay. Representing the applicant.
Mr. Chairman, for the record, my name is John Glossop, engineering 46 East Street in East Walpole. And Russell Yeager, the owner of the lot, is also here. So this is Arlington Lane, right, running off of Hancock. Come up Berkeley from North Street, take a right on Hancock, take a left on Arlington. Goes down here, sort of ends in a cul-de-sac, and then Evergreen goes off to the left. You know, there's been a little bit of history. I think at least some of the commissioners, and I know Landis is familiar with this property. So there was lot 11, which was recently, there was a home constructed on here by Diana Galeriani. And there's a driveway here. And lots 12, 13, and 14 essentially have a wetland between Arlington Road and the upland portion of those lots. So in this case, as far as I recall, from the day that Arlington Lane subdivision was proposed, there was an easement across this lot to provide access to lot 12. There were some plans that went back and forth with this because I did the subdivision originally, and then to get the subdivision approved, we actually combined 12, 13, and 14 and just showed it as one lot. So to sort of stop some controversy, but then John Anderson came back and re-subdivided them. And as I said, there's been an easement here, and it shows on a number of different plans, some that John did and some that I did. So that being said, because I was involved with this with Attorney Mackey, I'm just here to represent that there is a full and valid access and utility easement from Arlington Lane to lot 12. It just goes to the ownership and the use of the easement there itself. As far as what Maggie Walker said about a special permit, that's sort of outside of my purview. As I recall, back in the day when we did this, you didn't need a special permit for a driveway if it only went to 2 lots. It was more than 2 lots, but I'm not an attorney, so I don't know. That would be, I guess, the building inspector's call in the end. So this driveway exists. There was a stub here, and actually I think it went a little bit farther before Galeriani built this house. I think it might have gone a little bit farther, and now it's kind of gone. It's kind of mushed up a little bit on the ends. But we would take that driveway, extend it into the property. Here it is here. We show a turnaround here for the cars backing in and out of the garage here. We did add this, just thinking that, you know, that's something that, no one told us to add this, it's just something that, in our work with the fire department, they usually like to see something like this. It really has to do with what they don't like is police car comes, ambulance comes, another police car comes, fire truck comes, and now to get the ambulance out of there, everybody's scrambling to get out of the way. This leaves them some room to park their vehicles so that, you know, if it's the emergency where the ambulance needs to come and leave, there's the ability to do that without having to move a lot of other emergency vehicles around. Right now, the water exists. I think it's to somewhere in here, and the same with the sewer, and then those will also be extended into the property. You can see the water we have going here to the back, and the sewer going there to the front. We did, again, provide roof drainage for a half-inch of rain, and just like on the previous one, if you want me to bump that up to 1 inch, that's really not a problem. And then, you know, we're showing some grading, mostly in the front here, to sort of level this lot off a little bit before it drops down. Erosion control along here, starting up here, and then out to across in the easement, out to the front of lot 11 here. And these are the wetlands here. These were approved under the ANRAD process, and my understanding is that they're still valid. So I did not have these huge flags. I thought maybe you could know what the ANRAD number was, but I got John has it if you're not sure. So, maybe I didn't show you, these are the lot lines to this property right here. This is lot 12. It's basically 277,000 square feet, of which 118,000 square feet of that is upland. I don't know if that's contiguous upland because there's some upland in the front here. Yeah, I think that probably my way to describe that accurately describes the proposal And either myself or John can answer any questions that you might have.
Okay, Linda.
John, so just the work for the driveway, so there's an order of conditions for lot 11, which included the driveway coming into the property and the house and associated utilities and grading. Will there be additional grading of that driveway and the easement for 12A?
No,
Or do you, basically, it just needs to be paved?
this needs to be paved. I mean, they're gonna take wherever it exists, they're gonna take the top and subsoil off and put in gravel and pave it. But there's no change in grades. Right, so there will be
So there
some-
will be some site work, so
some
it's not
site
totally
work.
roughed in.
No, it's not totally roughed in, and, you know, when we did Arlington Lane, we did the best we could. Somewhere out here, there's a curb stop for this. There's, you know, the end of a water line, and there's also somewhere out here, we have the ties to the end of the sewer line. So those will also be brought in. That's work, that will also be done in.
Those were extended to the lot line,
Oh, okay.
to 12.
Okay.
They've already been done.
Okay, so John, okay, in fact, we show them at
Can
the.
you, just whoever's talking, can you identify yourself just because it's broadcast? Just state who you
identify
are.
yourself,
Oh,
John.
I'm sorry, excuse me. Yeah, I'm John Hassan.
It's more for the microphones and the taping of the hearings than us, so just, just
Yeah.
as loud as you can. Just-
Yeah, so we are showing them at the lot line, so.
And so are the wetlands flags out there now still?
Some of them are, Landis, the last time I was out there, I will gladly, if you wanna make it part of the,
Yeah, they should be refreshed, and then the
Yeah.
25-foot no alteration area should be staked.
Okay.
And then so the emergency gravel turnaround, that will actually be constructed. So it's, I mean, when I looked at it, I pictured a fire truck coming in and backing in there and maneuvering back out, and it's just was kind of really close to the 25-foot no alteration area. So I was picturing the fire truck going into the, possibly.
I'm not really sure it's for the big fire truck, I think it's more, and I could talk to the chief if you want. I know they're always concerned about.
But it's something that will be constructed,
We're showing it as being constructed, it's just
and it
simply
can't be
a gravel.
pushed further away from the well
Yeah.
because of the use of the yard for the homeowner.
Where would you like it to be?
I don't know, just further away from the wetlands line. But if,
You mean up here more, this way?
so it's really for like a police officer's car to back in or something like that, so it's not in the driveway area.
Yeah.
Okay,
I mean,
rather than-
generally what happens with
rather than
something
a
like this is
turnaround.
they go in, they gravel it, and it just stays like that, it sort of stays natural, maybe the pine tree needles fall on it over
Yeah.
time, but it's a solid surface that if somebody comes in there, they can park there without, you know, getting their car stuck in mud or driving on
Right.
someone's lawn. So we, just in our experience, and I didn't talk to them about that, but I know they usually want to see some.
No, I understand the use, it's just, I was picturing a big fire truck, and it was very
Yeah.
close to the wetlands and the no alteration area, but that's
I
just
mean,
an observation.
The alternative to it is to sort of try to make some sort of a circular
little further
drive.
up. And then the other thing is just on your plan, you show straw wattles and just compost stock. The details should show compost stock, not wattles.
Okay.
And then there was some discussion on the common driveway issue, but it wasn't, it's something that has to be taken up again with the building inspector.
Right,
It wasn't it can't be done type of conversation that I had. It needs to be worked out with the building inspector. That's all I have, really.
I have no issues right now.
Nothing.
Well, certainly, finding these spots to put houses, but I will pass for the moment. Reserve the right to come back. Estate?
I'm gonna pass for the moment as well.
Okay, my questions, my issue to start with, the emergency turnaround. I don't think it's big enough. I don't think, if a fire truck comes in this driveway, first of all, he's got to come in from Arlington Lane and make a turn onto this other part of the driveway. And
Oh, is that our purview?
but both of which are very narrow, and it's all in the buffer zone. I think that getting a fire truck stuck in here, he could get stuck in the wetland. I'm not keen on that. I think it needs to be a little wider and a little better. And if it's going to be there and be allowed to get grass growing on it or weeds growing on it, that's fine. I have no problem with that. But I just think that knowing the size of these fire trucks and you know, one of the reasons for us building a new fire station was that the fire trucks were bigger than the fire station that we had. Okay, so we had to tear down a perfectly good fire station and build a bigger one because the fire trucks are bigger. Okay, so I'm not going to accept the fact that a little narrow turnaround is adequate for fire trucks, whether they get in there or not.
So can I
but-
just talk, I'll talk to the chief about it.
Yeah.
Because my understanding from these things is they're really not, I don't think Kip Riggin had a fire truck down here, if you know what I'm saying.
Well, if there's a
They
fire,
usually stop, they hook up to the hose and they're gonna run that.
they're going to try to get as close as they can.
Right,
So,
that's right.
so at any rate, I want you to check with,
Yeah, I'll
with the
check.
fire chief and see what they have to say.
Yeah.
Because it would be, you know, cleaning up a damaged wetland because a fire truck gets stuck in it, or in my case, cleaning up a wetland because an airplane overshot the runway and ended up in the wetland. Cleaning up is an issue. So if we can avoid it at the beginning, so be it. Okay? I just want to see adequate protection along this edge of the roadway here that prevents any work going past the erosion control. The house itself, to me, is not an issue. But I do want to see, and I think we have to start, John, sometime like now seems a good time to infiltrate more stormwater than we have been in these cases, because the storms are not getting any less. They're less frequent, but the amount of rain we're getting now. The other night we had 2.5 inches of rain. You know, when I grew up in this part of Massachusetts, we'd get a thunderstorm, it'd give us half an inch of rain and it'd go away, and maybe a couple of days later we'd have another rainstorm. But we didn't have 2 inches and 4 inches at a time like we are now. Sure, we have long drought periods, but we pay for it in the end. So I want to see that we start looking at the amount of water we're infiltrating, because what doesn't get infiltrated then causes a problem somewhere else on the property. So I just assume we.
So this is kind of unique property, isn't it? Because topographically, I mean, the rainwater naturally runs into the wetlands.
Yeah, okay.
This may, your example may apply to many lots or valleys or different type of topography, but this is like a natural.
So if we're
flow to the
recharging,
wetlands.
if we're recharging a half an inch, it isn't that much of a problem to recharge an inch.
You can change it.
every little
You can
bit,
change it to
every little bit is in the right direction, and I think that's the way we have to look at it. If we can make a change like that on our own before somebody puts a hammer to our head and says you have to do it, we're better off, because it isn't getting any better. So,
John, how was that driveway pitched?
Well, the driveway would have to pitch towards the wetland.
Yeah, okay.
So, are you saying we're imposing our own stormwater regulation here?
I'm saying that we should suggest people look to the future and not look to the back.
What does the law say, as opposed to what, it's somebody's opinion here? Is this what, you're just saying that's your opinion that they should do it?
Yeah, that's my opinion, that we should be
We
thinking.
can't be
like that.
imposing our opinions on landowners. That's absolutely wrong. We're not here to impose our opinions. I mean, if the landowner wants to go along with it, that's okay, but we don't have any authority to tell our landowner, that's our opinion, you gotta comply with it?
Well, there must be some fuzzy edges, otherwise you wouldn't need a board of citizens. I mean, here we are, a board of citizens, so there must be some things that you do need to have some sort, no? I mean,
No.
otherwise just have one single person just, looking it up in the law book and pointing to the answer. But there's gotta be something
I
about this
mean,
process that requires.
I know what you're saying, John.
I think there's a lot of non sequiturs in what you just said, Betsy, but I'll
Really?
put that aside for the moment.
Well, then you tell me what's
The
in
po- the
that
question simply is, what do the stormwater regulations state? What is it? I don't know what it is.
Nothing. He doesn't have to comply to the stormwater regulations
then
because
fine.
it's a
That's it.
single-family
Then we-
house.
then we-
But the Conservation Commission has always looked towards the future and had policies to do something beyond. And it's not, no one is suggesting the project should be denied if the applicant does not comply, but we do, and the commission has made suggestions to look into the future, and that's the history of the commission. They've always done that. And I
Well,
think
so-
that's what
so
Al's
that-
saying.
The theory is if
He's
somebody did something
suggesting.
wrong in the past, they should
He's
keep
not
doing it?
denying the project, he's suggesting that it would make sense to infiltrate additional stormwater. Right? I don't mean to
Okay,
talk
if
for you,
that's
Al,
what
but
we're doing,
that's what I see.
I find that, but the point is, we have power over these people. And they need to understand what the rules are before they come before us.
Do you
We can't-
understand the rules, John?
John,
Well, I would
both
just
Johns
say,
understand the rules,
I'm not
John.
necessarily what you'd call an environmentalist, but, as we do at pavement and rooftops.
Yeah, this is what's called
we do
municipal
take-
blackmail.
We do take water that would normally go into the ground and we inadvertently make it surface water, which really isn't as helpful to the environment and to all of us. So this is a very minor cost item. I actually show it on just about every plan I do to put a half-inch of water back into the ground. John didn't tell me to do it, no, Landis didn't tell me to do it, I just usually do it. It doesn't really hurt anything, it's not like it costs a gazillion dollars to do it, it's probably a few $100s, so it's not a bad idea, but.
It's good practice.
But it's not the
Good
point. The
practice.
point is,
I understand your point, he doesn't have to do it. He's not subject to the Massachusetts stormwater regulations, and the
And
town
we
of
should-
Walpole doesn't have stormwater regulations.
and we shouldn't even be touching it.
Why can't we suggest something positive? It's a suggestion, right?
We proposed it, and Al wants us to
Okay,
do it.
fine.
So this thing's about, each one of these are 4 feet long, so this thing is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So it's
So you
28
probably
feet long.
add
So we'll
one.
put another one in the front yard.
So Jim, he could probably put it down in that little corner piece there too, and
So
he
alls
wouldn't have
it's
to
doing
worry
is the
about
water
the
comes
driveway, it'd be
down-
right on
Comes
Arlington
down the
Way.
downspout, right, and rather than go off onto the grass, that first half inch of water is gonna go right in, just get stored in here. So when there is the second inch of water, it'll go onto the grass. It'll have another opportunity to soak into the ground, but eventually that water will just go right into the wetlands. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but
That's not my
just
point.
trying
My
to
point
sort
is,
of balance
This
things
is the
out.
sort of thing that can get so easily abused.
Oh, it does. Go to Dedham.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, you
I
can
know,
take
I'm
a
dealing
gun,
with
you
these
take a
towns.
gun and
I know
shoot
it,
yourself
I know
if
how
you were
this is,
in
yeah.
Dedham, so
Hey, I grew up
we
in
like
Dedham.
to-
Don't,
yeah,
don't,
you
don't make
know,
fun of Dedham.
Be happy you moved out.
I don't
So,
think we're,
you know, it's a sort of a friendly thing. We kind of work with each other and we recognize a need and we just sort of do it. And if you want to pass a regulation, then we'll be passed, you know.
We should
subject
probably
to
discuss
some-
that.
Some sort of local regulation.
The last thing we need are more regulations.
We should discuss adding it to our regulations, and everyone will know what they have to do.
But believe me, it's a low-cost item.
Okay.
And a lot of towns just kind of do it in this manner, which to me is a very friendly manner, and a lot of towns have these ridiculous regulations that make no sense.
so we're one of the friendlier towns that you
I
can go
would
for?
say so, yeah.
With a friendly
They have
Oh,
such
yeah,
a good
there's a lot
agent, I
worse.
think that really
Yeah,
makes,
yeah.
makes everything work well.
Can I ask a stupid question?
Yes.
Can you just identify yourself
My
again?
name is Jeff Flourish. I live at 24 Arlington Lane.
He was complaining about the last one.
No, I'm just curious to understand, you know, if you have a common driveway,
Yeah.
do the residents have a letter of agreement between them on
Yeah.
who's gonna take care of the driveway,
Yeah.
who's gonna pave the driveway?
Yeah,
who's
that's
gonna-
all, that was
Filed
all,
at the registry of deeds.
yeah,
It's
that
a
was
legal
all
agreement that
worked
everybody-
out with
Yeah, it runs with
Delaware
the property.
Because John owned that lot too, so he protected
Oh,
himself.
if you
and
share
he
it.
has an
Yeah, I have
agreement.
one.
But they
Oh,
signed
okay.
everything,
Yeah, it's
so
a private
they know
road.
it.
We gotta
Everybody
take
knows
care of
who
it.
plows,
You gotta pay
who
70,
uses
we
the
pay
driveway
$75 a
days.
month to maintain.
And the
it.
applicant provided us
Oh,
with
wow.
a copy of that, so we have that in our records.
Thank you for answering my stupid question.
No question is stupid.
Nope.
You know who I am, right? The guy who put the little markers in your front yard.
Exactly. Yeah.
And they're still talking to me.
Yeah.
Why is that man digging holes in our front yard? We didn't dig up any gas lines or anything.
No, no, it's
There's
all
no
good.
reason to continue this. Okay, I'll accept the motion to close the hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any special conditions you want Landis to include?
And we usually do include it, but just that the wetlands line be refreshed, the flags, and, the 25-foot alteration, no alteration area be staked
Yeah.
prior to cutting, unless they wanna give me a call and it's hard to do it without cutting, then I'll work with them. And then
You mean put the hay bales, put the silt area?
well,
right?
stake the 25-foot no alteration
Yeah, we
area,
can do
and
that.
then.
We'd like to do that
Okay,
right away
yeah,
before the leaves come out
Right,
on the
yeah,
trees.
yeah, okay,
'cause it's a
yep,
lot
that's
easier.
fine, and then, compost sock
Yeah.
rather than the bottles,
Yeah,
and then,
yeah. I'll see the chief.
Yeah, yeah, just talk
I'll-
about that emergency, I mean, it should be adequate so that they're not gonna be plowing into the wetlands, that's what I saw, and obviously if there's an emergency, they're not gonna think about no alteration plaques, so, yeah. I don't know, any other,
And then we'll change it to 1 inch.
Okay.
We'll just put another one of those
Yeah,
trenches in the front yard. And then you can hook the front ones into that and put the back ones into the other.
okay.
Thank you.
vote,
Vote.
vote?
Could still
We
vote
need
it
a
down.
motion to accept the order of conditions
move
as
that.
proposed.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So, no.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Thank you.
Okay. I think that's everything on our agenda. Chairman? Oh, this is just sign before
Oh,
you
goodness,
adjourn.
yes,
so.
yes, yes. Please.
Could I raise a comment to your board?
Sure.
Um,
You remember you're on television.
Yeah, there's
Okay.
an article petition by Mrs. Lewicki, and I put my name in. She's an owner of property in town, but she's not a resident, so she had a petition, and she thought it had to be a resident of Walpole, so I put my name on her behalf, but it's her petition. She's is seeking to get the a different open space plan put back on the books in Walpole. And it's one that was recommended by the Mass Planning Association. I guess it's widely used, like in towns like Mansfield and a number of other cities. At any rate, hopefully when that comes out, you folks will have a chance to review it. And I'm a town meeting member. I would love it if the Conservation Commission was in support of open space, because I think it is a very, my impression is if it's used properly, it's your prerogative whether to approve it or not. It's a effective tool for planning that can preserve resource areas, wetlands, streams, ponds, create bigger buffer zones, animal habitats, etc. And it's a shame we don't have that.
John, we do have an open space plan, and Landis is probably the most important member of the committee to renew it. You know, it has to be renewed every couple of
I'm
years.
sorry, I'm talking about the zoning book. I'm sorry, I didn't.
Right, you're referring to the open space residential development
Yeah.
option for
I'm sorry, yeah,
subdivisions.
I didn't mean that, yeah.
Right, so I would say it's not on the agenda tonight.
No, I know, I just wanted to alert you to the
They hold us
fact.
pretty close of discussing things that are only on the agenda, so
Oh, okay.
if we want to put it on the agenda for discussion at another meeting, once that,
Yeah, why don't I do that? I'll secure some copies, make sure you get them, and then maybe set up a time to come back. Just, I think it'd be worth, maybe, I hope it'd be worth your time, just to.
there's a zoning
Entertainment.
article, it'll also be a public hearing with the planning board that,
Exactly.
that the commission could make comments to. We usually get something from them to make comments.
Right. Okay, that was it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Motion?
Motion for what?
Adjourn.
Oh, yes, yeah, second.
Who was the first one?
I think it was Raj.
Okay.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.